friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 14 of my 2019 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be making a card using this Birdie Brown stamp set called Snow Buddies from MFT. So I have stamped out my images in black licorice hybrid ink on some Nina Solar White cardstock, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers. I'm starting with the little girl, and for her skin, I'm using E0000, E00, and E11. I did a little shadow up under her hat, including on her ears, with that E11, and then pulled that down with the E00, and then finished with the E000. And then I went back in with that E11 and added a touch more of that shadow. And then I'm using R12 to give her some nice rosy cheeks. For her hair, there's not a lot showing, so I'm just using two shades. It's YR21 and YR23. There's two little strands that come down on either side of her face, and then there's her little braids that are sticking out, kind of Pippi Longstocking style, which I love. So I added a little darkness with the YR23, and then blended that out with the YR21. And then once again, just added a bit more of that YR23 to bump up the contrast. Then I'm moving on to her hat, and I'm using R11, R21, and R22. I'm going to emphasize the lines that the artist has drawn with that R22, just pulling those a bit down further and then almost outlining the hat. And the reason for that is there would be a shadow on each side to give it that rounded appearance, and then there would also be a shadow cast by that brim. So I'm just going to blend all of that out with the R21, just kind of tracing the edges of the R22. And then I'll fill in all that center area with the R11. I'm also going to color in her scarf to match, and again, just like with the hat, I'm going to trace over those lines that the artist has drawn and just emphasize those, and then give a little shadow to the underside of the part that's kind of flying up behind her. I wanted a real soft kind of peachy pink tone for her outfit, and that's going to match the pattern paper that I'm going to be using perfectly. I also colored her stockings to match, and I put the shadow on the front since her skirt is kind of falling down over her knees, so it would be casting a shadow. And then I also did her mittens. I just used a little more of the R22 and left off the R11 so they would contrast against her scarf. Next up is her sweater, and I'm using YG61, YG63, and YG67. So I am going to add a little bit of that YG67 along her back and bring that toward the front. I'm also going to put a little shadow under her arms because those are upraised, and they would cast a shadow on the rest of her little outfit. And then right up in the crease where her elbow is kind of bent, that would have a shadow as well. Then I'll pull that out with the YG63, just really softening that color because there is quite a bit of difference between the lightest and darkest shade here. So I really want to make good use of my mid-tone. And then I'm going to fill in with the highlight color, the YG61. And then I'm also going to add in that green to every other stripe on the brim of her hat. I'm just putting my shadow up toward the top. I thought that's a pretty tall hat with a pretty big pom-pom, so I just thought I would add that shadow to the top brim so it's kind of looking like it's rolled over maybe a bit. So just quick and easy on those little stripes. For her skirt, I wanted it to be just a bit darker but still green, so I'm going with G24, G28, and G29. Again, just putting those shadows right up under her belly where her sweater is kind of overlapping, and then blending out to kind of emphasize those little pleats. So the G28 is the mid-tone, and then just going right across real quick with that G24. Then I'm going to use C0, C1, and C3 to do the little pom-pom on the top of her hat. I'm using that C3 to add a little shadow over on the bottom left, and then a few little dots that are going to kind of give it a yarn-like texture, like a pom-pom. And then I also am going to make the other stripes on her hat brim white, and then her little Ugg boots are going to be white as well. So then I'll come in with the C1 and do the same thing, just adding those to the stripes and then real quick to the boots. And then I'll finish with the C0. And that dot detail on her pom-pom really gives it a lot of texture. If you can't tell right now in the video, you can see it later when I lift the card up, but it's just really kind of makes it look really soft and fuzzy. I'm also going to use those same shades for the little dog's body. So I'm starting with that C3 as my darkest to put in the shadows, and then I'm going to blend that out with the C1, and then I can finish with the C0. So he'll almost look like a little white dog, or maybe just real soft gray once I get the other colors added to him. And those are going to be C3, C5, and C7. So my darkest for his body became my lightest for his spots and his ears. And then I just added in the C5 and C7 to really darken that up. So I'm doing his little ears and then all three of those little spots, the one over his eye, and then the two on his body, his shoulder and his hip there. I always make sure that wherever the eye is going to be the lightest shade so that the eyes don't get covered up too much. You really want those eyes to stand out because that's what gives your critter or your person or whatever image you're coloring, that's what gives it the personality. I used the same greens that I used on the skirt for the little dog's scarf, and now I'm moving on to my snowman. I wanted something that wasn't too aqua blue or white. I wanted something that was a little bit different that would match the pattern paper. So I started with BG70. Didn't really show up enough, so I did add in a little bit of BG72. There is quite a difference between these two, so I'm using that BG72 pretty sparingly so that I can really blend that out with the BG70. And that's just going to give him a nice frosty look, but it won't be too blue toned because there's not really any blue in the pattern paper that I'm using. So his accessories are going to be kind of a cranberry red and white. And I already did the white parts with the same cool grays that I used on the little girl's outfit and on the dog's body. So for the reds, I'm using R43, R56, and R59. Again, just like I did with the girl, I'm emphasizing the little pleats and things. I just think it gives it so much personality and definition to have those little creases and folds in the fabric. To be honest, these Birdie Brown images are such a delight to color. They're some of my favorites to color because you can just really sink your teeth into it. And if you're a colorist like me, if you really love to color, they're just such a delight to work with. So that's why the video will be on a little bit of a longer side today, just because I was having too much fun enjoying the process to hurry through it. So I'm just going to quickly color the hat to match. And at the beginning, I wasn't sure what color I wanted to do the brim, so I just left it plain. But I end up deciding to go back and do that with the cool grays, just so that the stripes stay consistent with every other one being red or white. And for those stripes, I just put the darkest on the outside edge to make it look nice and round, and then having that nice highlight in the center really bumps it out. I'm going to take a black Sakura gel pen and go over the eyes of all the critters to make them bright and shiny. And then I'm going to trim these images out with the matching dies. Now I did realize as I was starting to tape down my dies that I forgot to color in the snowman's little branch arms. So I did go back and grab my E44 and just quickly color those in, just the one shade since they were so super thin. And then I trim those out and just pop those into my little dish that I keep on my desk for all of my images. And I thought I would show you, I do save my Post-it tape. I reuse it several times until it stops being sticky. So I just add it right back on top to the little post-it tape dispenser. And then, yeah, I can use them probably 5 or 6 times before, they start to fall apart. I'm using the Snowflake collection from Crepe Paper for my pattern paper. And the first print I'm going to pick out is this tree print because that is what I use to color my images to match. And now I'm going to flip through the pad and find 3 more prints that are going to look good together. I really liked this soft pink and red plaid, so I picked out that one. I thought this pink with the little gold stars would look really good on those, or asterisks, snowflakes, whatever you want them to be. So I'm just going through and picking things that are on a good scale. You want to have a nice mix. So I have the colorful print, I have a nice plaid, I have a small print, and then I picked out that red polka dot, which is a tone on tone. So you can see that all 4 of those go really well together. I continued to flip through just to see if there was something I liked better, but in the end I decided to go with those 4 sheets. So I'm going to trim these down with some different dies and my paper trimmer and set those aside for the assembly a bit later. In the meantime, I'm going to stamp my sentiment in Lawn Fawn's cranberry ink on a little snowdrift that I trimmed out using the MFT stitched mini scallop circle stacks, and then the top edge is using the Hit the Slope Dynamics, and I'll show you those dies in just a second. I did stamp that down 3 times because it was a brand new stamp and I wanted to make sure I had a nice clear impression. Then I'm going to pop in my card base so that I can stamp on the inside. I'm using Lawn Fawn's speckled eggshell cardstock. It has some nice little brown flecks in kind of a cream colored cardstock, and I just thought that went really well with kind of the cozy theme of this card. So those are the dies that I use to trim down both my pattern paper that I'm using for the background and that snowdrift. I also trimmed out a piece of cheap white cardstock just to give that focal panel a little bit more stability. So I'm going to glue those together and just make sure that I have those scallops lined up well. And that's the great thing about using liquid glue, is that you have that little bit of wiggle room to make sure that everything is, right in place before, it adheres firmly. And then I'm going to do the same with that snowdrift, just adhering that down to the bottom of the scene, again lining up those little scallops. Then I'm going to take the A2 Stitch Rectangle Stacks Set 2 Dynamics from MFT and trim off the left edge of that little focal panel. I wanted it to be justified all the way to the left on the card and even hang off the edge a bit, or be flush with the edge, I guess I should say. So now that that's done, I can grab my images and get those placed on the focal panel. I'm going to start with the little girl since she's going on the left. I wanted to make sure I had enough room for her with that edge cut off. And then the little snowman is going to go over on the far right. Then I'll grab the little dog that's going to go right between them, because he's the little snow buddy that's referenced in the sentiment for the little girl, and they're building the snowman together. And then I've got that little pile of snowballs that I just thought would be a nice little cute embellishment, something that's a little bit different scale, and I'm going to put that kind of overlapping the snowman over on the left of him. So that is how that's looking, and I'm going to set that aside and work on my card assembly now. So I trimmed down that plaid pattern with that same A2 Stitch Rectangle Stack Set 2, and then the red polka dot, I used the Lawn Fawn Stitch Party Banner die, and I just selectively die cut the bottom to give it that fishtail banner and the little stitched detail. So I'm going to adhere the plaid pattern first to cover most of the card base. It'll have that little tiny bit of a border of the cardstock showing through. And then I've got this little red polka dot fishtail banner that's going to go over on the left hand side. And then that really pretty Christmas tree pattern that was the inspiration for all of my coloring, that's going to go over on the right, just overlapping both of those other pieces of pattern paper. Then I'm going to grab my focal panel, and I have added some foam tape to the back of that. So I'll just peel off the backer sheets, and I'm going to line that up on the left-hand side of the card. I don't want to go all the way to the left. I actually want that stitching detail on the left to line up with that plaid pattern paper, because that also has that same stitch detail. So it will also have that little bit of the cardstock border showing on the left. I bet you can guess what my final embellishment is going to be. My favorite embellishment, crystal stickles. And I think I have used it in every card so far now except one, and in that one I used the Christmas red stickles. But it's not just like for the sake of using it. I truly love this stuff. I just think it looks so pretty and just really adds that nice festive holiday feel. It's just the right amount of sparkle. It's not too in your face. It looks great over whatever color you put it on. And I just love this stuff. So I just added it here and there all over. I added it to like the pom-poms and the hat bands and the scarves. And I think I added it to her boots as well. And then of course I've got to add it to the snowman. Just making everything look really sparkly and pretty. And if it gets where I don't want it, you know, it's real easy to just kind of smudge it away with your finger. And, you know, a little bit goes a long way. I don't like to cover things. I just use it as an accent. But, you know, it adds, like I said earlier, just the right amount of sparkle to me. So I actually need to get a new bottle soon. I think this one is still from last year. It really lasts a long time. So I'll lift that up to the camera so you can see how it catches the light and give you another peek at the inside. And that is going to complete my card for today. I love how cozy and girly this one turned out. It reminds me of PJ pants, which are my favorite thing to wear in the wintertime. I just love cozy pajama pants. It's the first thing I do when I get home from work. So let me know down in the comment, what is your favorite cozy thing to wear during the winter or when it gets cold? If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell if you haven't done that to make sure that my videos always end up in your feed. If you'd like to keep on watching, here's day 14 of the previous 2 years of holiday card series, and I hope you all have an amazing day. Bye-bye.